All right, so maybe third time's the charm. We're going to give this one more shot. It's actually important for me to walk through this whole section thing because we are going to use it down the road. So I'm not going to temporarily view the section because that appears to not like me very much. So instead, I'm just going to proceed with creating the rendered section. And I think this is one of the, if you can master this skill set, it will serve you really well down the road. One of the problems with many 3D modeling programs, including SketchUp or Rhino, is if you set up a temporary clipping plane, when you go to render it, you get a rendering where that half of the building that's clipped off is like wide open. And you've seen this happen in SketchUp where the sun can just come in. And that's not really a true reflection of what the building would look like inside, as if the rest of the building was there. And so we're going to make this building a little bit special in that we're going to make the walls and some of the materials, the part of the building that we're clipping, so to speak, we're going to make them opaque to light, but transparent visually. So it's a weird kind of tweak on the materials that is not realistic. Obviously, that kind of a material doesn't exist in real life. It's like an invisibility cloak or something. Like, it doesn't actually exist, but we're going to create it for our purposes of this section. So to do this, what I ultimately need to do is I need to be able to split my building with this giant plane. And that's why I created the plane in the first place. But before I do that, I've got some blocks and some block references that need to be modified. So I'm going to type in here SEL block instance to select my block instances. Once those are selected, I'm going to go ahead and type explode. And so there, that by itself is a sign that I'm doing something that's going to harm my model, which is why I wanted to make sure that I did a save as before I did it. It's also really annoying because as I go through all of these individual blocks, I have to keep saying replace the existing material. I could probably just say use the existing material. It might go a little faster. There we go. So I've exploded those blocks, but I want to make sure I get all the blocks. So I will go back and type SEL block instance again to select more block instances, and then type explode there. I'll deselect everything, and then SEL block instance again. There's some more. SEL block instance. And eventually I'll get to where I see no objects added to the selection. Perfect. So there's no blocks. They're all exploded. Now I can perform my split. So I'll type in the split command, and it's going to say select objects to split. I'm going to type in all so that I get all the objects, and then I'm going to deselect that big plane. So I held down Control and I deselected that plane, and I'll go ahead and I'll press Enter. The next thing is to select the cutting objects. That is the big plane. So I'll reselect that big plane, and I'll go ahead and press Enter. And as this goes through, it's going to start working to split my objects. There's going to be some things that pass on my command line that say split failed. That's just because the plane doesn't intersect every object. So sometimes there's objects that aren't being intersected, in which case the split's going to fail. So I need to let this kind of run for a little bit. I don't believe this is going to crash, unlike my first 2 tries today. But it does take a little bit of time to run through all of those objects. The more complicated the building is, the more shapes there are, the longer this split tends to take. Perfect. So it ran through all of the splits. At this point, I can go ahead and I can turn off that section plane layer, that layer right there, because I don't need that anymore. And you can kind of see, certainly on the terrain, that there's a divide between one half and the other. I'm going to look at this building in my plan view, or potentially in one of my side views here, such that I can kind of see one half versus the other. And if I were to select one half, say all of that half, I would be able to select basically the whole building that's on this half of the plane. So in this scenario, all of this material I would ultimately want to be that special material that we can visually see through, but that stops light. And so that material is something that I've made for you. There's a tutorial on the course website that will walk through how you create it. It's under tutorials and then V-Ray, and it's called cThru. See if I can find it here. There it is right there, 8.22. Alternatively, you could just download the material, which is ultimately what you kind of want. The preview kind of gives a good idea of what this is. Essentially, what this special material is it's invisible, but it casts shadows. So like I said, not a realistic material, but it's something we can use for these sections really nicely. So you'll go ahead and download that zip file. I already have it on my course on my flash drive, so I don't need to download it again. And I'm going to bring that into V-Ray. So I'll open up V-Ray. I'll go to the materials pane here, and I'm going to open that special cThru material. So let's go find it on my flash drive. It's under V-Ray and then special materials. There it is right there. And I can go ahead and I can load that. It doesn't look particularly fancy here on the preview, but it is what we want. So I'm going to apply that to all of the objects that are on this layer, or that I've selected. The problem here is that some of those objects are actually glass. Well, I want those to be transparent because if there's glass, I want the sun to be able to penetrate those objects. So I'm going to go through in my menu here, and I'm going to look for any objects that are glass. So I'll come down here and I'll say, okay, where are my glass objects? And all I have to do is turn them off. So there's one that has glass. We'll just turn that one off. There's another one that has glass. We'll turn that one off. There's some glass. We'll turn that off. There's some glass. Because the glass has been assigned, it's pretty easy to just look through and find the layers that are glass. Okay, so I believe I've got all the glass. Wait, there might be some more down here. There's some more there. Okay, so I was able to get all of that basic glass. So with those turned off, now I can apply that cThru material to everything that is here. So I'll go back to my V-Ray asset editor here. I'll right-click on cThru and apply objects or apply material to selection. And that means that all of those objects now have that cThru specialized material on them. I'll deselect everything, and then I'll go back and start looking at my my list here. And whenever I have a object that's turned off, say this one, I'll turn it back on in the glass. Then I'll right-click on it and say Select Objects. We'll see there weren't any on that layer. We'll come down here. There's another one. We'll right-click. We'll say Select Objects. I'm just trying to, as I go back through anything with glass, make sure that I get it selected. There we go. Select Objects. There's some glass. We'll turn that one on. Select Objects. There's some more glass. Turn that one on. Select Objects. So it's a little bit tedious to go through and make all these selections. And there we go. So I was able to select all those objects. Now some of those that I just selected are on the wrong side. So my cut line was right there. So I'm going to hold down Control and make sure I deselect things that are on the wrong side of my objects. So those are on the part that I want to keep. These ones here, I just need a transparent material, a very basic transparent material. I'll open the V-Ray asset editor here, and I'm going to create a brand new material. It'll be generic. I'll rename it transparent. Here we go. And then I'll open the drawer to the right here and adjust my opacity to be 0. So it's completely transparent. Nothing to it. I'll right click and say apply material to selection. That would be all those windows. So those windows that used to have glass on them are now completely transparent, as if they're not there. Okay, so I have this set up. We'll go ahead and come back to where we can see my render. So I already have the exterior render 3 view right there. I can perform this same render and you guys can get a sense for what it looks like. Let me go into my V-Ray options here. I'm going to change the size down for right now. Sorry, my render output. We can change that size down. We'll do it at maybe 200. There we go, so it's nice and small, and then we can do a test render. So I'll click on the render button. And so in this case, I'm still in my night settings from my last rendering from last class, but you can see where the building's been cut. You can see where the section lines are, etc. So this is going to render out a sectional cut. It happens to be a night sectional. And we can see that the blue light here is applying. Everything's still applying the way it's supposed to be applying. The difference is that I've eliminated the front half of the building, so I'm seeing it as an actual section. So it's a little bit involved, and I wish the preview, the live preview, would help you guys just kind of see what's going on here. But unfortunately, it doesn't seem to want to work. I'm going to give it a go, see if I can make it work now that all the objects are exploded, see if maybe the blocks were what was causing the problem. But I wanted to at least get to this place where you could understand how to create the section in the first place. We will go back through the same thing when we create the line drawing plan view and the line drawing section view. So it's not like you will never see this section process again, but it's really important because it does control how the light enters the space. If this was a daytime rendering, if I reloaded my V-Ray options file and loaded it back in for daylight, you could see that all the daylight as it penetrates through the windows would actually cast shadows on the ground as if the rest of the building were still there, which is kind of the important part of it. So I apologize that this was such a choppy lecture and ended up being very unrewarding, but hopefully you guys got a bunch of work done anyway in the process. Like I said, I'll see if I can resolve the clipping plane or the section tools and see if I can make that work. At this point in the semester, a couple other reminders as you start to work forward. Make sure in your V-Ray options that you're turning the V-Ray swarm on before you do your rendering. It can make a big difference. I'm still working through a few of the settings to see if I can't refine those a little bit better. Let's see, what else is important here. V-Ray swarm, we've got to make sure that's on. I'm not quite sure why it restarted the render. Oh, probably because I just turned the swarm on. I'll stop that for right now. So we have those set on. Make sure you're saving your files. The other part is under the Render Elements tab. I currently have it set up for background, lighting, material ID, render ID, shadows, and Z-depth. I would encourage you to make sure that those are turned on for yourself as well, because you're going to need those long term when you do your Photoshop collage and that sort of thing down the road. So it's better to turn those on. That being said, when you get to your renders, and get that render window set up here. Told you it's not my day. There we go. Make sure that you're using the multiple disk save. That way you're saving all those render elements, the channels, and that way you're getting all the various channels. As an example here, I can still preview my channels, so like the render ID that's telling me what each object is as a different color. We can use that for selections in Photoshop. Material ID is telling me what materials are there and what those materials are. So you can kind of get a sense. We have the alpha channel, which would be what the background is, what's transparent. Z-depth is not set correctly for this particular rendering. Background is giving me just what the background looks like, etc. So make sure that those are on and that you're saving all of your channels when you do your renders. Okay, so I think that covers about what I need. When it comes to what you post today for exercise 225, oh, two things. One, you'll notice that this is exercise 225, not 224. If we were going in order, it would be 224, but we don't have enough days in the semester, so I cut 224 out of the semester. Sorry, it is what it is. But that being said, you guys all get a free pass on 224. You get credit for that, even though you didn't do it. When it comes to 225, post whatever you have. So yes, today was about sections. I talked about sections. If you're not ready to do a section and you're working on something else, just post what you have, and I'll still give you credit for it. Make sense? So I expect you to be here. I expect you to work. Whatever you're working on is acceptable for handing in for 225. Same thing applies as we go forward. All right? I'll let you guys go, and I'll see if I can't figure out how to make that temporary view work.